Welcome to this deep dive. I'm your host, and today we're actually going to start things a little differently.
I'm really glad to be here for this one. As a psychologist, I can tell you the topic we're exploring today is something absolutely everyone deals with, even if they won't admit it.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, because normally, we just jump right into the deep end with a roadmap of all our sources and where we're going, but something has just been sitting really heavy with me while we were preparing for this.
You want to say more about that?
Yeah. It's the specific kind of tiredness. And I don't mean the I need a third cup of coffee kind of tired, or the I stayed up too late kind. I mean the sheer exhaustion of performing.
Performing strength.
Yes. Do you know that feeling? The weight of walking into a room, whether it's a boardroom or a family dinner, or even just, logging onto a Zoom call and feeling like you have to toggle this switch that says, I've got this.
It's a very specific, very heavy burden.
It is. It's this intense pressure to project absolute stability, even when internally it feels like the dashboard lights are all flashing red and the engine is smoking. It's just the exhaustion of pretending to be okay.
That disconnect you're describing, that massive gap between the face we show the world and the reality of our internal landscape, is a central paradox we really need to explore today.
Right?
Because we have built a culture and, frankly, a personal psychology where it is infinitely easier to act brave than to simply admit that we are afraid.
Act brave. Wow, yeah, that's exactly it. And there's this image from our research that I literally cannot shake. It's this visual of a man standing at the very edge of a massive cliff.
Such a powerful metaphor.
It really is. The wind is whipping around him. The drop is lethal. I mean, death is literally inches away. But if you look at him from 20 feet back, he looks totally zen. Perfect posture, calm face, steady hands.
But inside,
his heart is pounding like a trapped bird against his ribs. Every muscle is clenched so tight it hurts. He's completely terrified. But he's putting every ounce of energy he has into looking like he isn't.
that image is so resonant.
Yeah.
Because it perfectly captures the architecture of what psychology calls the mask. See, in that moment, that man on the cliff isn't actually fearless. He is performing fearlessness.
He's putting on a show.
Exactly. And the tragedy is that in that performance, he becomes a prisoner. He's trapped by his own refusal to acknowledge the biological reality of what is happening in his own body.
So that's the mission for our deep dive today. I want to unpack why we build this massive fortress around our fear. Why are we so terrified to just say the words, I'm scared? And here is the part that I'm a little skeptical about, but honestly also desperate for what would happen if we actually stopped fighting it.
That's the real question. And just a quick disclaimer for you and anyone listening right now, this conversation is not going to be about crushing your fear. We aren't going to talk about how to hack your anxiety so you can be a more productive worker.
Which is usually exactly what I'm looking for. I just want the 5 easy steps to make the uncomfortable feeling stop.
Of course you do. We all want the off switch. But the wisdom traditions and modern clinical psychology point to something much more radical. It's not about elimination, it's about integration. It's about essentially making friends with the monster under the bed.
Okay, so let's start with the fortress then. Why is that instinct to hide our fear so incredibly strong? Is it just pride?
It's much deeper than pride. It's actually about survival. There is a concept in Buddhist psychology called asmita. It translates roughly to I amness.
I amness, okay.
It's the construct of self-identity that we build from childhood. Think of the ego not as arrogance, like we usually use the word, but as a coherence machine. It's an operating system that loves a consistent story.
So it's the narrative we tell ourselves about who we are.
Right, it tells us I am the smart one, or I am the strong one, or I am the one who never panics in a crisis. We build an entire identity based on competence and control.
That resonates so much, the I am the one who fixes things identity.
Exactly. So when fear shows up, the ego panics. Not just because of the external danger, not because of the literal cliff, but because the fear disrupts the story.
Oh, wow.
If I'm shaking, does that mean I'm not strong? If I'm incredibly anxious, does that mean I'm not capable? The asmita, that core sense of self, feels existentially threatened by the very existence of the emotion.
So we interpret the biological sensation of fear, which is really just cortisol and adrenaline flooding the system, as a character flaw.
Precisely. We take biology and turn it into morality. So we put on the mask, we say no worries or I'm on it, when our stomach is actually tied in knots. But here is the major problem with that strategy. It causes leakage.
Leakage? That sounds, well, not very pleasant.
It's the harsh reality of suppression. Just because you put on the mask doesn't mean the fear goes away. When you suppress an emotion, it becomes a ghost in the machine. it leaks out sideways. Have you ever found yourself snapping at a loved one for something tiny, like leaving a cup on the counter?
Oh, absolutely. Or I'll find myself doom scrolling on my phone for 2 hours when I have a major deadline hanging over me.
That is leakage. Procrastination is very often just fear wearing a mask of laziness. Or think about that low-level hum of exhaustion you mentioned at the very beginning of the show.
The performance fatigue.
Right. That isn't always physical tiredness. Often it's the sheer caloric expense of keeping the fortress walls standing. You are burning massive amounts of energy trying to hide your own humanity from the world, and honestly, from yourself.
Okay, so I'm burning energy, I'm snapping at people, and I'm totally exhausted. Naturally, my immediate instinct is, how do I fix this? How do I get rid of the fear so I don't have to hide it anymore? But the research we looked at suggests that trying to fix it is actually part of the problem.
It is. This is what we call the myth of fearlessness. We think the ultimate goal is to reach this enlightened state where we simply never feel afraid. But trying to willpower your way out of fear, or even using spirituality to bypass it, is just another layer of armor.
Spiritual bypassing. I've heard that term thrown around. Is that like when people say good vibes only and refuse to acknowledge anything negative?
It can be, yeah. In this specific context, it's when you say to yourself, I shouldn't feel this way because I meditate, or I shouldn't be anxious because I'm supposed to be a conscious, evolved leader. You aren't actually liberating yourself from the fear. You're just judging yourself for having it. The original wisdom teachings never told us to eliminate fear. They taught us how to meet it.
And this brings us to a major shift in perspective. If we aren't supposed to eliminate it, and we definitely aren't supposed to hide it, what are we actually supposed to do? There was this idea in the sources that fear is data.
Yes, fear is a messenger. Think of it like a dashboard light in your car. It's not a flaw in the engine. It's a feature of the system. It's pointing towards something that really matters to you.
Can we break that down a bit?
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest, when I'm scared, it doesn't feel like a helpful message. It just feels like a giant neon sign screaming, "Run away!"
It feels incredibly primal, I know. But if you look closer, there's always a message. If you have an intense fear of rejection, what is that actually signaling? It's signaling a deep, fundamental longing for connection. You crave belonging.
Okay, I see that. What about if I have a massive fear of failure regarding a new project at work?
It reveals that you care deeply about your purpose or your craft. If you didn't care about the outcome, you wouldn't be scared. You would just be indifferent.
So by shutting down the fear, we're essentially hanging up the phone on the things we care about most.
We are silencing the messenger, and in doing so, we lose the message. We lose the connection to our core values. There's a really beautiful metaphor from the Eastern traditions with the lotus flower. You know how the lotus grows, right?
In the mud, I think.
Deep in the muck. The lotus doesn't bloom in spite of the mud. It blooms because of it. The mud provides the exact specific nutrients required for that flower to open. In this analogy, fear is the mud. It is the soil for courage. You simply cannot have courage without fear, just like you can't have a lotus without the mud.
I really get the poetry of that. I do. But let's play devil's advocate for a second here. Because that reframing is super helpful intellectually, but physically. In the heat of the moment, it is still intensely uncomfortable. Nobody wakes up and says, "Yay, I'm panicking today, bring on the lotus." It just feels bad.
It feels visceral.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the concept of the second arrow. This is a classic Buddhist teaching that explains why we actually suffer so much more than we need to.
Walk us through the arrows.
Imagine you're walking in the woods and you suddenly get struck by an arrow in the arm. That hurts. That is physical pain. It's the biological reality of the situation. But then almost immediately your mind kicks in. You think, why me? I'm so stupid for walking in this part of the woods. This is going to ruin my entire week. I'm such an idiot.
Ah, the spiral.
The spiral. That mental reaction, that story that is the second arrow. The first arrow is the fear itself, the rush of adrenaline, the cortisol, the racing heart. That is unavoidable. We are mammals. We startle. But the second arrow is the shame and the judgment we pile on top of it. I shouldn't be scared. I'm weak for feeling this.
So we double our own pain.
We double, sometimes we triple our suffering. We suffer from the initial fear, and then we suffer intensely from our resistance to the fear.
That means the goal isn't to be fearless. The goal is to just stop shooting ourselves with the second arrow.
Correct. The goal is to be fear-wise. It means observing the feeling, what mindfulness texts call vedana, or feeling tone without judging it. You stop identifying with it, you stop saying, I am a coward, and you start saying, fear is present.
That phrasing feels really important. Fear is present. It sounds a bit clinical, But there's a story we came across about a woman named Maya that really brought this home for me. She's this high-powered executive, brilliant by day, super competent, handles everything perfectly. But at night, she's completely paralyzed, just lying in bed, replaying every email, every single conversation.
Maya's story is such a perfect example of the architecture of self-deception. From the outside, she looks incredibly successful, but she is caught in what is called upadana.
Upadana, which means clinging, right?
Clinging or grasping. It's an intense attachment to an idea or an outcome. Maya clings desperately to the identity of being the capable one. And notice what she does. She uses productivity as a shield to keep the fear at bay. But the part that really struck me was how she uses meditation.
Yes, that part was fascinating. She wasn't meditating to be present. She was meditating to calm down so she could get right back to working.
She was using mindfulness as a sedative.
Literally just a productivity hack.
Exactly. Her mindset was, if I meditate for 10 minutes, the fear will go away and I can be an efficient machine again. That is spiritual materialism. True mindfulness isn't about getting calm, it's about getting real. Instead of trying to fix or banish the anxiety, she needs to treat it like a guest at the table.
I love this image so much. You don't let the guest move in and take over the master bedroom, but you do pull out a chair and offer them tea.
You sit with it. You ask the guest, what are you trying to tell me? If Maya actually did that, she might realize the fear isn't a monster trying to destroy her career. It's a signal that she desperately wants to belong, or maybe that she feels like an imposter and just needs some reassurance. When you stop fighting the guest, the tension in the room, that internal war, just dissolves.
It sounds so simple when you say it like that, but it really requires this massive shift in identity, moving from I'm afraid to fear is present. It sounds like just semantics, doesn't it?
It sounds like wordplay, but neurologically and psychologically, it is entirely distinct. When you say, I am afraid, you are claiming the emotion as your core definition. It consumes you. When you say fear is present, you become the witness observing the emotion. You are the sky, and fear is just a passing cloud. The cloud can be dark, it can be stormy, but it cannot fundamentally hurt the sky.
Okay, I want to get really practical here, because I know there is a listener out there, or maybe it's just me thinking, this sounds amazing philosophically, but I have a mortgage, I have a boss. If I walk into a high-stakes board meeting and just say fear is present while staring blankly at the wall, they're going to look at me like I have completely lost my mind.
I completely agree. Context matters deeply. Please do not get fired on my account.
Right. So when the hands are actually shaking and the pressure is on in real life, what do we actually do?
There's a specific, actionable triage practice for exactly this moment.
Yeah.
And it involves the body, because fear lives in the body, not just in the mind. If we think about the diagnostic framework of suffering, the path out involves right effort.
Right. And this leads to the hand-on-heart technique.
Yes. This is radical hospitality in action. Step 1 is simple. Pause. Physically place a hand on your heart.
Why the hand on the heart specifically? Is that just a symbolic gesture?
No, it is deeply physiological. Touch releases oxytocin. The warmth and pressure signal your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, that you are safe. It physically breaks the fight or flight mental loop. It grounds you right back in the room.
Okay, so we ground the body first. What is step 2?
Step 2, whisper the truth. Simply say to yourself, I'm scared.
Just acknowledging it outright?
Just acknowledging it.
Yeah.
We often think that admitting it will make it worse, like we're giving the fear more power over us. But remember the pressure cooker. Naming the emotion actually releases the steam valve. It engages the prefrontal cortex, your thinking, rational brain, and dampens the amygdala, which is your fear center. Name it to tame it.
Name it to tame it. I like that. And then step 3.
Step 3 is the pivot. You ask yourself, what is this fear protecting?
What is this fear protecting? That completely flips the script. It assumes the fear is actually on your side.
Exactly. It turns the fear from an antagonist into an ally. If you're terrified of giving a public speech, the fear is protecting your reputation. It's protecting your desire to be respected by your peers. Once you see that, you can say, thank you, fear, for caring so much about my reputation. But I've got this.
There was another metaphor related to this holding of emotion that I thought was just beautiful, the river and the riverbed.
This is one of my absolute favorites for visualization. The ego, that rigid fortress we talked about earlier, tries to be a dam. It wants to stop the flow of the water, to totally control the river of emotion. But dams eventually crack under the pressure. We see this in what we used to call nervous breakdowns.
The water always wins.
Always. You cannot stop the river. Mindfulness teaches us to become the riverbed instead. The riverbed doesn't try to stop the water, it holds the water. It is stable and it is spacious. It allows the flood to rush through, knowing that the water's moving and the bed remains.
So we're the container, not the content.
You are the awareness that holds the fear. You are not the fear itself.
This naturally leads us to a concept called transfiguration. Because when you start doing this, when you stop fighting the water and start holding it, something fundamental changes. And it's not just about getting relief from the anxiety, it's actually about discovering a new kind of strength.
It's the profound realization that fear and love are deep, deep partners. Think about it. You only fear losing what you love. If you didn't love your life, you wouldn't fear death. If you didn't love your partner, you wouldn't fear them leaving you. So every pang of fear is actually a testament to the depth of your love.
There is a story that illustrates this transformation so well. The story of Angulimala, for those listening who might not know, this is a pretty intense story from Buddhist lore. He wasn't exactly a nice guy.
No, he was a terrifying figure, a serial killer, essentially. He wore a garland of fingers taken from his victims, which is actually what his name translates to. And the story goes that he was chasing the Buddha through the forest, sword drawn, fully intending to kill him. He was running and running, shouting at the Buddha to stop. And the Buddha, who was just walking calmly, turned around and said, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped."
Chills. I get chills every time I hear that line. It is you who have not stopped.
It's so profound. The Buddha had stopped running from reality. Angulimala was running from his own immense suffering, his own terror, and he was fueling it with violence. The transformation happened when he finally stopped running and faced himself. He didn't become a saint by suppressing his darkness. He transformed by facing it head on.
And that leads perfectly to this idea that vulnerability is actually the ultimate form of strength. We usually are taught to think of them as opposites. Strength is putting the armor on, and vulnerability is taking the armor off and being weak. But really, admitting I don't know or I'm terrified is the most confident thing you can possibly do.
Think about it in a leadership context. Who do you trust more? The leader who pretends everything is absolutely perfect while the ship is clearly taking on water? Or the leader who stands up in front of the team and says, "This is a terrifying situation. I do not have all the answers yet, but we are going to figure it out together."
The second one, instantly, because they are dealing with reality.
Exactly. It aligns inner reality with outer expression. There is no leakage. There is no energy wasted on maintaining the mask. That is true power. The man on the cliff we talked about earlier, he doesn't fall when he admits he's scared. He breathes. He actually finds the solid ground beneath his feet.
He realizes that fear and presence can actually coexist.
Yes, and that is the key takeaway here. You don't have to wait for fear to leave before you start living. You don't have to wait for your hands to stop trembling before you speak up. You can tremble and speak. You can be scared and be brave. In fact, that's the only way you can be brave. Bravery isn't the absence of fear. It is action in the presence of fear.
It's funny, we started this whole conversation by talking about how exhausted I felt from performing strength all the time. And just talking through this with you, I feel a genuine sense of relief, just knowing that the goal isn't to somehow get to a magical place where I never feel scared again.
The final twist of this entire journey is exactly that. You don't need to get over fear to live fully. The fear isn't a barrier to your worth, it's a testament to your depth. It proves that you are alive, that your heart is open, that you actually have skin in the game.
It reminds me of the idea that the thing we have been running from our whole lives, the fear, the anxiety, the deep insecurity, is actually the doorway home.
It is the doorway to our shared humanity. We spend so much of our time trying to ascend above our human experience, trying to be these perfect, unshakable robots. But the fear is gravity. It pulls us back down into our bodies and into our hearts. It connects us to everyone else, because everyone else is scared too. Even the wisest teachers, even the leaders you admire most, they all get nervous. They all have their own cliffs.
So the invitation today, and I really love thinking of it as an invitation, not another chore or command, is to just try that simple act.
Yes. The next time you feel that sudden tightening in your chest, that overwhelming urge to run away or to put the mask back on, just pause. Put your hand on your heart to prove to your body that you are right there. And whisper the truth. You don't have to shout it to the world if you're not ready. Just whisper to yourself, "I'm afraid."
And just see what happens.
See what happens. The world won't end. The cliff won't crumble beneath you. But the massive, exhausting war inside, you might just call a ceasefire. You might find that you are already whole, even in your trembling.
Already whole, even in your trembling. That is definitely something I'm going to carry with me this week.
It is the absolute truth. The prison door was never actually locked. We just forgot that we held the key the whole time.
Thank you so much for helping us unpack this today. It really feels like we just took a massive collective breath after holding it in for a very long time.
It was a true pleasure to walk through this with you.
And to everyone listening, thank you for diving deep with us. As you go about your week, I want to leave you with one final thought to explore on your own. What if the feeling you have been trying so hard to conquer all these years isn't actually your enemy, but just the loudest expression of your love? Be kind to yourselves out there. We will see you next time.